way and offering them a broad choice of candidates, and a lot of very strong candidates.
What are you hoping to hear from them?
You're going to be declaring today your leadership bid.
Well, I'll be having something to say about that next week. But today is the first chance for the Labour Party to come together since our extraordinary defeat, and to reflect on the nature of that defeat, but also, crucially, not to repeat the mistakes of 2010 and allow the Tories to steal the policy agenda on regional devolution, on a federal UK, on some of the cuts they're proposing to the public sector. So we've got to discuss all that today, and it's about the way in which our party's led and the ideas behind it, as well as the specific leader.
Were you disappointed that Creagh pulled out of the contest?
Yes, I think Creagh's a great voice in the Labour Party and has much to offer, and he will continue to have a great deal to offer. But it's about the ideas and the nature in which the party's going to be led, as well as the leader. I'll see you later.
Tristram Hunt has actually said in the last few minutes at this event, we'll turn the mics up in just a moment, that he will make a decision and make his intentions known next week. As you can see, the man who's probably the favourite right now, Andy Burnham, just starting off one of the answers. Let's hear what he and the other panel members have to say.
Let's move on and talk about why you didn't say something before.
But what I would say now is we shouldn't underestimate the seriousness of the situation facing the Labour Party. We cannot assume we're at ground zero. I think things are very serious indeed. We've got a long way back to win. So the question you're asking me, Sam, is why did we lose?
No, I'm asking you why you didn't say something about the strategy on the way in, was what I was asking you.
People made different comments throughout, and as I say, Ed was the leader. I was loyal to Ed, loyal to Gordon, loyal to Tony. That's right, I think. We should be loyal in politics. If you let me just develop
No, I want to ask Yvette why, again, same that question all the way down.
We all, can you hear me? Yes,
yep.
I think, look, we all have to take responsibility for this. And there were people around the country and progress activists, not least Richard Angel, who probably visited more constituencies than anybody else in the entire country. And there were thousands of people who knocked on doors and worked incredibly hard and feel devastated at this result. So, of course, all of us have to take responsibility. And I'm not saying that we should, any of us, duck that because we've been part of that shadow cabinet. We had to fight together and do everything we could to win that election, but we failed. But that means we have to fight even harder to win the next one.
Mary?
Well, I take my part. I played my part in the shadow cabinet, and we all have to take collective responsibility for what happened at the general election. And to those 9 million people who voted for Labour, who need a Labour government, who are going to face the next 5 years with trepidation and anxiety as they continue to work for their own poverty, I am sorry that we failed to win last week for you. I can only issue heartfelt apologies. But we also failed to paint a picture of what the country would be like.
Those were the next questions. Tristan, why didn't you say anything?
I didn't think the result was going to be as bad as it was. I thought the Conservatives would be the largest party. I thought we'd be relatively close behind, and I think the Conservatives are frankly surprised at the scale of their victory. We lost because we didn't appreciate the seismic tidal wave in Scotland. We lost because we lost core votes in traditional Labour communities, and we lost because we didn't reach to aspirational marginals, and that's the triple bind.
Thank you. Liz, why didn't you say anything?
I mean, I did argue that we needed to focus on reform of our public services to get better value for money, as well as better results, and I did make the case that we needed to be positive, otherwise we'd risk sounding like the moaning man in the pub. Ed was our leader, he got our loyalty and support, and unity will be essential to win in 2020. But that unity has got to come out of a real, open and honest debate. It's got to come out of all parts of the party, not trying to fudge the difficult issues. We will disagree. We need to debate, decide, unite. That's what we need to do and win in 2020. Let's have the courage to do that.
Now, there's been a lot of description this morning of the size of the rebuild. We know there are only 24 constituencies that have majorities less than 3,000. We know there are 18 only SNP constituencies that have majorities of less than 10,000. We know that the kind of universal swing, despite what Peter Kellner said this morning, in the context of what Peter Kellner said this morning, that universal swings don't deliver, that the swing is of the order of 10% in order to get even near to a majority. So the question is, I think, not so much much. Let's not talk so much about what went wrong, but let's assume that
Well,
there's
you
another...
did ask us, to be fair,
Sorry?
what went wrong. You did ask us what went wrong.
No, I'm saying let's move on from that. You're absolutely right. No, Liz, and thank you for the correction. Very helpful. Always.
Touché.
No, I always feel nothing more welcome than unsolicited personal advice. But let's talk about how we rebuild. That's the key thing. The party's got to talk about how you rebuild. So what I would like to ask you, and Yvette, you get the first chop at this, what does Britain look like under your Labour government? I don't mean a Labour government. I want to know what it looks like under your Labour government. And Andy, then we'll come back in that round. Yvette.
We want it to be stronger and fairer. We want everybody to feel part of it and not to see this fracturing that's been happening, where we have lost votes to not just the Tories but also to UKIP and to the SNP and even to the Greens. And we're seeing that reflecting in that politics fracturing is reflecting our country fracturing, with the rise of hostility, people blaming in Scotland, blaming England, in England blaming Scotland, and our communities being divided as well. And we have to unite our communities. We have to defend that core Labour value that we are stronger when we stand together than when we leave people to sink or swim alone. But we will only do that if we have a strong economy that everybody can feel part of as well, where everybody can feel their ambitions for their kids are being met, where we don't divide businesses by talking about predators and producers, because we believe that all businesses should play by the rules and should grow and be strong, and where we want a fairer society that everybody can feel part of and no one is left behind.
Thank you. Mary.
I want to see a country that is united, outward-looking, and can face the future with confidence. I think one of the things that happened with the UKIP vote in some of our industrial heartlands was that certain cities have done extremely well. London's done brilliantly. And why has London and Manchester succeeded where some of our industrial heartlands have felt that they've been left behind? They've succeeded because a Labour government in '97 came in and said, we're not just going to allow the city to hollow out, we're going to invest in education, we're going to invest in transport infrastructure, and we're going to make London and Manchester globally confident, outward-looking cities where everyone's welcome to come, everyone can have the confidence that their kids will do better than them, and that they can get to work in a fairly easy, straightforward, low-cost way. In certain parts of the country, people are sat in traffic for an hour and a half a day to travel 30, 50 miles. We have no real vision about what climate change is going to do to our country and our world. We have a Tory party that wants to set us adrift from Europe and risk jobs and prosperity. So I want to see a green economy where every child gets on, no matter who their parents are or where they come from. I want an economy and a society where it's not where you come from, it's about where we come together, and business works with government to play its part.
Tristan.
Well, I'd like to see cultural confidence of people who feel they can celebrate their Scottishness, their English identity, their Welsh identity, and a Labour Party that supports that. I want to see economic security. I want to see a Labour Party trusted with the public finances and the family finances, and we failed at that at this election, and because we failed at that, we weren't allowed to prosecute many of our other exciting initiatives. I want to continue Ed Miliband's work on the war on inequality. I think everything that Ed achieved in terms of addressing that, we shouldn't undo, and what that means is an absolute refocus on early years and early years investment, and that's where you challenge inequality at root. We spend the same levels as Scandinavia on tax and spend, but we waste it on redistributive welfare payments later in the cycle rather than the investment earlier in the cycle. This isn't about raising taxes. It's about a much smarter level of public expenditure. And finally, confidence in Europe. We are an internationalist, pro-European party, and we need to seize the initiative over the coming years of making the case for Britain in Europe.
Thank you. Liz?
I came into politics because I believe in the equal worth of every single human being in this country. and that your chance of fulfilling your potential should never be determined by where you're born, what your parents did, your gender, your sexuality, or the colour of your skin. We will only succeed in our families, in our communities and our country as a whole if we unleash the talents of the amazing people in this country. That should be the core defining mission of the next Labour government. There are some people who want to blame others for the challenges we face as a country, pull up the drawbridge and kind of tell the world to go away. We have got to show people they can face the future with confidence, not fear, because they've had the skills, knowledge, chances and choices to build a better life for themselves. For me, the purpose of getting power is to give it away. That's what we should be doing next.
Okay. Thanks. Andy.
When people look at the party I lead and then the government I lead, I want them to feel an emotional connection with that party and that government. I want them to see people they can relate to, people who look like they understand what their lives are like, people who can speak to their aspirations. Because if we're honest, anyone who's been on those doorsteps in recent weeks knows this in their heart of hearts. We have lost that emotional connection with millions of people in this country, not just in Scotland, all parts of the country, and we must get it back. Aspiration doesn't belong to one part of the country or one group of people. We need to speak to the aspirations of everybody. We need to speak for everybody. But we will only get permission to do that if we address head-on the fundamental weaknesses that stand in the way of our route back to power. Number one, economic credibility. We have to get that back. Number two, our relationship with business. We must be a pro-business party. But number three, we have to address immigration. We have to address that in a credible and convincing way. Because until we do, we will not be able to get that permission to be heard, to be able to inspire people with a bigger vision of what a Labour government can do. We need to address those three issues in this leadership election so that we come through it and we put our party back on the road to government.
So there's some broad themes there. They are themes about aspiration doesn't belong to one part of the country. We need to have a better relationship with business. We need to somehow deal with, Tristan mentioned international issues. That, in a sense, brings in immigration. There's a whole set of things here which are still set in the context of this question about economic credibility. Now, there was a big argument this morning about whether or not we should have run deficits after 2003. Most people are saying whatever, Chris Leslie says, well, if we'd known there was a banking crisis, we shouldn't. A lot of people say whether there was a banking crisis or not, we shouldn't have run a deficit. The question is, how are you, given the baggage of your own past and the arguments that you've taken on in the last 5 years, how are you going to advance an argument for an economic credibility? And importantly, what does that mean? Does that mean running a surplus every year, all the time? What does it mean? What does it mean to run an economic surplus, and what does it mean to have credibility? Because whether or not you think we were responsible for the crash, or you think we were responsible for the deficit, that's what the public thinks. Mary, what does economic credibility actually mean in Labour policy?
I think people have forgotten the economic credibility that the last Labour government had.
What, the end of boom and bust? That was credible.
We had 96 quarters of continuous growth, the lowest unemployment since the 1970s, and we rebuilt the public fabric of this country. 100 new hospitals, 3,000 new schools. Those are things that people prize and treasure in their communities. Were we wrong to run...
We're just going to leave Mary Creagh and the other candidates answering that question. Back with more coverage for you in a couple of moments.
A few billion.